Hi everybody, I'm going to do a quick demo here on encaustic incising. I know all of you who are watching, if you've experienced an encaustic, you're probably really familiar with this process. It is one of the most widely taught, maybe, and easily comprehended techniques. It's a basic. But what I hope to share are a few tips on what make it work so well for me and some of the tools that I really love to use. So that's what I'm here all about this morning. First off, obviously just sample boards. This is the one I worked on last week and showed you encaustic excising. So if you haven't seen that demo, it's on YouTube now. And this is another sample board that's got some incising going on in it, and I'm just going to work back into both of these and show you techniques that I use and tools that I use. So first off, a couple tips. Incising means to cut into, literally. So carving and cutting into the wax is what incising is all about. So any tool that will offer you the opportunity to do that, to cut or carve into the surface, is a great incising tool. But I want to point out, and maybe this is obvious to you already, that metal tools are going to be your most effective, not because they work the best, although they do, over and above wood or plastic, but because they're the easiest to clean. All you have to do is put that metal tool directly onto the encaustic pallet, then wax will melt off of it, you wipe it with paper towel, and you have a clean tool once again. So that is if you keep your tools clean. Right. Anyway, so that's tip number one. Tip number two is that because you're cutting into the wax, that incising is drawing into the wax, it is best to have a slightly warm surface. That just allows the tools to move more freely and smoothly and easily through the wax. Sometimes when it is cold or too cold, even though you've fused each layer appropriately, coming back and incising into the surface can cause it to chip. Now, the temperature in my room is rather warm, so I'm not getting chipping. But if it were winter, sometimes those, this line would carve and it would chip the edges away. So having a slightly warm surface is really advantageous. But one tool that I love to use above and beyond others, I don't have my all-time favorite version of this, but this is the inexpensive version from a hardware store, or in this case, Harbor Freight, is just a wire brush. This, alternatively to what I just said, is best used in a cold surface. So you don't want that warm surface. The reason I point that out is because all these little incising tools, each one of these little bristles is an incising tool. It is individually cutting into the wax. If you were to go over the warm surface, and certainly you can, it ends up picking it up the wax of the warm surface and kind of muddying it, creating a paste over the surface of your painting, which, if that's what you're after, is perfectly fine. It gives you an interesting look. I just prefer to use it into the cold or room temperature wax and surface because I get a feathering and just a distressing of the wax with this brush. And I can be really deliberate and just draw one line with it and have those small hair-like scratches, or as I was doing originally, really scratch away at it and distress the surface so that when I apply the oil paint to catch in those incisings, it will be just a texture. My brush was a little bit gummy from previous use, so you see some color there. That's all that is a previous use wax. Second favorite tool, just because I like to mark make, to line make, and to draw, is a needle tool. This is a bookbinding needle tool, if you will, and it's my favorite. It feels great in my hand. I can treat it like a pen. Writing with it, when I have soft enough wax, I can actually write and scribe, and it has a great tip. It's rigid enough and strong enough that it doesn't start curling or bending like some of these can, although this one doesn't either. This has a dual tip. It's a pottery tool meant for writing and carving, I guess, if you will, if that's going to be the right choice. And then my example of a wooden tool is a toothpick. I like to use this just to make dots. If I don't have enough natural incisings going on, these little air bubbles that happen when you fuse, then sometimes I like to enhance them or create more with the tip of a toothpick. Last but not least, if you have a Harbor Freight tools near you and you love to write or add words to your encaustic paintings, these are fantastic incising tools. This is the largest set available, so in other words, these numbers and letters are the largest you can get, but they also have, and I'm not going to give you the sizes because I can't remember if this is a 1/2 inch, they have a 5/8 inch and a 1/4 inch, something like that. They have 3 different size sets, and because they're at Harbor Freight Tools, you know they're incredibly affordable. So have fun with that. I won't put those, well, yes I will. I'll use one letter, here we go. See if my wax is, oh yeah, it takes really well. A tip for these, if you're using any tool, say, you know, like these letters or cookie cutters, shape cutters, and cutting into the wax, it can be really helpful, or stamps, even rubber stamps, believe it or not, work in this process. But yeah, then the wax needs to be really soft. But if you're doing any of those things and you want to make sure that it's not going to stick and pull away the wax, dab a little bit of oil onto the surface of the tool. So I would take a paper towel and get it a little bit wet with oil, even just vegetable oil, and then push it in, and that allows it to release nicely from the surface. Then comes the paint. So the whole point of creating these incised lines is to enhance them with oil paint and bring out the texture you've just created. I just used an R&F paint stick, pigment stick, and it is fantastic. If you're unaware of them, I do encourage you to check them out. rfpaints.com. They are a blend of oil paint and beeswax. So they come in this I'm going to say crayon form, but they're not crayons. They're soft, buttery, and absolutely delicious. And then I'm also using a Williamsburg oil paint. This is a Golden product, actually. They own the Williamsburg Paint Company. But I also adore Daniel Smith in terms of Daniel Smith oils. In terms of smooth, beautiful, rich, dense color, highly pigmented application of oil paint over the surface. So just because I can talk over my work, I'm giving you my favorites. Daniel Smith, Williamsburg, and RF Paints pigment sticks. So there you have it. And then as you can see, once I get that paint down into those incised lines, or just on the surface, I then get it really down into the incised lines with gloved hand, just smearing it into the surface. And this is where I work it into those little natural incisings as well. Pick it all up in those natural air bubbles that I've created. Once I'm satisfied with having smeared it everywhere I want it, look at how fun that is to have that iridescent pale gold blending in with the black. Maybe you can't, the iridescent might not pick up on the camera, but I promise you it's pretty. And then rubbing away the excess, I've got my collage piece peeling away. Rubbing away the excess, you can see what I mean by using that brush and over the room temperature surface and having it create just, you know, very fine hair-like lines that give just enough texture to pick up all that color. It's gorgeous. And I can even rub away more so that the line work shows up a bit more, but I like the look of it here. I'm going to stop. Come on over to this surface. Yeah. Before I added this oil paint, a lot of times I like to soften those edges of my incised lines. So working into the cold room temperature wax can create really sharp edges. And sometimes I'll take my heating tool, my heat gun or a torch, and soften out those edges, let it cool completely, and then come back with my oil paint. It's a completely different look. and one I really appreciate. So give both of those techniques a try when you're trying out incising yourself. But how's that? Okay, it's not gorgeous, it's not a wonderful composition, but you can see the effect all of those incisings, those techniques, those materials had on the wax. Good stuff. Hold this one up a little closer. I don't know if you can hear it, but I have tree service taking down 8 trees in my yard right now. Good stuff. That's why I'm in here broadcasting. It terrifies the heck out of me. They're too close to our house and the neighbor's house. All right, that's that. Have fun with it. Incising. Maybe everything you already knew, but I had fun sharing. Thanks for being here. One more thing, I would then fuse this. This is an added layer. If it is my last layer, I wouldn't necessarily have to fuse. I would let this oil paint dry, but I usually give it a quick fuse just so it works into the surface a little bit more. And if I chose to, I could come over with more wax over the surface then. Enjoy it. I'll be back with you next Wednesday, because this Saturday, when I would do a Saturday broadcast, I'm going to be out at Keeneland. It's closing weekend for the races. Enjoy. Bye-bye.